Scotia Indians, as we called it then, began in 1969 with a series of meetings. The first one was a meeting of the chiefs of the Maritimes, and they were called together by Indian Affairs Department, and they were named, their committee was named the Maritime Indian Advisory Committee. I think the next day they had another meeting and they called in those people they thought could help form an organization. And they called 8 of us together. And we went to a third meeting of theirs, and they instructed us to put together an organization that would help the chiefs and also look to improving conditions in our communities.
When I came home from the States, I heard some great things about the Union going on, and that it started as a result of the white paper policy introduced by Mr. Trudeau and Keptin. And it's got everybody across Canada up in arms with regards to demolishing or getting rid of special status for Indians across Canada, and it was a policy that was going to be geared to, I guess, not for the extermination, but for the assimilation of people to the major population, I guess, Canadian population.
Well, when the Union started, I was with the Department of Indian Affairs. I remember that I left and I went with the Union as the research director on land claims. Well, the interesting thing is nobody, no one believed in the treaty except the Mi'kmaw. Once you knew we had treaties, then we had to prove that these treaties were valid, and the people who didn't want to believe it, there was a lot of Mi'kmaw people who knew of the treaty, but it was being withheld. All that was shoved in front of their nose was the Indian Act, and they kept saying that, well, everything that you say is in the treaty, we're already doing under the Indian Act, which wasn't correct.
After you were a chief for a little while, you understood that this wasn't the way in which you were going to make any progress or any development in the future, because Indian Affairs dictated exactly what they were going to give you, what they thought was best for you, and what they would allow for you.
When it became clear that the government was not going to recognize our rights, either Aboriginal title or Aboriginal treaty rights, the only choice that the Union had at the time was to take the issue to court and prove it. Now, the first case that went ahead was in 1976, was a Stephen Isaac case, was a Bottleneck hunting case. And that one proved that we had hunting rights on reserve. The next one was in 1981, James Matthew Simon, which went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and that one proved that we still had treaty rights. It found the Treaty of 1752 was still valid, and Jimmy Simon was acquitted of all the provincial hunting charges that were laid against him. So that proved for the first time that we had a hunting right. The government didn't recognize the court decision, so we had to plan. The Union planned what we called the Mi'kmaw Treaty Moose Harvest in 1988 on Hunter's Mountain. And in the end, 14 hunters got charged, but halfway through their trial, the Crown dropped all the charges. And shortly after, we had an agreement with the province that the Mi'kmaw could hunt according to their Aboriginal and treaty rights, and that continues even on today. The next one was fishing. And we had 3 fishermen. We had Tom Sillaboy, David Denny, and Lawrence Paul from Eskasoni. And all 3 were charged for fishing for food. And that went through trial. It went to the appeal court here in Nova Scotia. And the appeal court said, and we were really surprised, because we usually lose cases in Nova Scotia, but the appeal court in Nova Scotia said that those 3 Mi'kmaw fishermen had an Aboriginal right under Section 35 of the Constitution to fish for food. And as a result of that case, we came up with the food, social, and ceremonial fishery, which still exists today, where people are allowed to fish for food. But the big problem then was, what about those Mi'kmaw who wanted to sell their fish to earn money for their families? And for a number of years, the government of Canada and its fisheries officers would charge Mi'kmaw people for selling fish. So I remember back in 1993, the union had organized a salmon harvest, like a protest salmon harvest at the Margaree River. And I remember we had meetings, we gave out permits, we talked to different fishermen, we called the media, we even called the fisheries officers, and we did the protest fishery in Margaree River. But we forgot to invite the salmon, because our guys caught no fish. It was kind of embarrassing, but it was a big deal.
The majority of its existence, of the 50 years it's now existed, has been, at least what it's been known for, is rights promotion. So it's been involved in litigation, it was involved in research, historical research, that ended up fueling the litigation. And so it was very active in promoting the rights that emanate right out of our treaties, and the rights that we have recognized under Section 35 of the Constitution, which came out in '82. So the union was very active in advocating, promoting, and litigating Section 35 rights. And that was, of course, through the efforts of Bruce Wildsmith, and through him, we've had a lot of significant victories, such as the Marshall case.
So I remember after that, we organized a media conference down here at Kings Road in Sydney. It used to be the Holiday Inn, I think it's the Days Inn now. And we remember some of our chiefs, our lawyers, talking to the media, explaining what we were trying to do. And during that media conference, guess who walks in the door? Dal Marshall Jr. And if people know Junior, I mean, he didn't like reporters, and here's a room full of reporters, and Junior walked in. So after everyone had left, Junior came up to the front of the room where the chiefs and the lawyers were, and he showed us that he was just charged for selling eels in Palmcourt Harbor. And so that started the court case on Junior, and that lasted 6 years. The Confederacy Mainland Mi'kmaw joined the union at the time in defending the case. We spent 3 years in trial, both in Antigonish and in Halifax. We lost it at that level, and we also lost it at the appeal court level, which surprised us because they had just acquitted Denny, Paul, and Sillaboy. And so finally, in November 1998, Junior had his day in court in Ottawa, Supreme Court of Canada. And I remember, because some of us went with Junior that day, and after that court hearing, some of us were sitting around in a restaurant just talking about the case. And it's funny, just by the questions that the Supreme Court of Canada judges asked the lawyers, we got a sense that Junior was going to win this. And of course, come September 17, 1999, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that Junior had a treaty right to trade fish, according to the 1760 and 61 treaties. So that was the time I spent with the union, and it was mostly fighting court cases, but we were winning court cases. But at the end of the day, we proved that we had both an Aboriginal right according to Section 35, that we had treaty rights, 1752 and 1760 and 61. And by the early 2000s, the government of Canada changed its mind.
And all of those cases began with the research that was done by the union in the early 70s. Research that was directed more or less by Uncle Alec and others. and I believe it was Stu Killen who was actively the researcher.
The Mi'kmaw Nation is now doing what they want to do, how they want to do it, without being told by the federal government or the Indian Act, here's what you have to do. All I can say is when I was working with the Union of Nova Scotia Indians, it wasn't work. I mean, it was a great day every day. It's a great place to work, you know, even though I didn't get much money.
Ilk was was one of the kindest and most understanding of the leaders we've had among the Mi'kmaw people in Nova Scotia. He represented us well, and he knew what we needed to do as an organization. He had always talked about our treaty rights and our treaties that the Mi'kmaw Nation had signed with the British government.
And I remember him very well. He was always on the go. But Alec Denny was the president, but Joe B. and a lot of the other people were people who were on the road.
Alec, Denny, Noel Doucette, Stan Johnson. These are three key people that I grew to be very fond of and respected. That they were the initial fighters. They were the ones that did the legwork, that did all the informing and fighting with the government. They they were a good example actually for. I'm not that much younger, but I was younger then, and they gave us something to look up to, and they were a classy bunch too.
It was Uncle Alec who was keeping the memory of the treaties alive in our communities, and he received his knowledge from the oral tradition, from the family he grew up with, and he had faith in that oral tradition, and he kept the issue of our treaties being pre-Confederation treaties and pretty much written out of the history textbooks. He kept the treaty relationship alive within our culture.
What Premier Savage has outlined in saying that we have worked hard and diligently for attaining self-governance of Mi'kmaq people is true to a certain extent. Unfortunately, if you look at each and every research right across the province of Nova Scotia, you will know that the majority of us still do not have people employed in the forestry level that we would like to have. We have not utilized the waters in the province, fishing. We do not have enough of our people. The stereotyping of Mi'kmaq as lazy Indians is still with us in 1996. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you that we, the Mi'kmaq people of Nova Scotia, and of each and every reserve, want jobs just as badly as every other town and municipality in these provinces. It's ironic, isn't it? that the largest reserve in eastern Canada, Eskasoni, we have tried for 5 years to get a bank in that community. Every time we tried, they tell us, okay, give us a year, we'll work on it. Mr. Premier and the opposition members, if the banks of Canada do not want to come, all I ask for is, would you help us in getting the banks of America, United States of America, to come? Because our native people in America are more than willing to come out and start banks at our reserves. In the 80s, we saw a monumental change for the inherent and legal recognition of Mi'kmaq jurisdiction with the adoptions of sections 25 and 35 of the new Constitutional Act of '82. Constitutional protection elevated the responsibilities of both the federal and provincial governments toward Mi'kmaq issues. We started Mi'kmaq Justice Institute in January of this year and began the hiring process and training in April of this year. In July of this year, our court workers started to work. And one court worker in the first 2 months reported to us that he had 238 criminal cases in 2 months. We are really not that bad in Cape Breton. But we certainly don't break our new employees gently. We figure if we don't burn them out in 6 months, then they'll last indefinitely. And here's an example. I feel more monies are needed for us to hire court workers. In July of this year, we took on Mi'kmaq Young Offenders Program from IAMS. We have a program second to none in Canada in restorative justice. But the funding shortages only lets 5 Cape Breton bands reap the benefits. We have 8 other bands in mainland who must and want to participate, but we cannot afford it.
Mi'kmaw Denny sida sotti kabel nola. Mi'kmaw dan delwid mi diskiskok economic development. Med ekkiga bejidabni tikula bilwin logi bejidabni beji sa se volti dipko kiga manakin wanko ignam wadip maskui ignam wadip sweet deal ignam wadip well luane shelsel ta hoekul we go kundal aha eldo dibnikul kuidin kula melkib midagal kuchina kuidin kul gizidodis kul taam kul teltes mi shini Joey Smallwood dan deltes meski volleyball nigi sugali ajnadi mugajolo tok chijina gabel no lodi dan lit piado nigi garwa mejuega oxygenin kisi dedemena kasuna menabem ko bazo hanki dedemulan dan lit piado ko gabel no na Aglas yeoja. Nägemo naban kadmidi del tax haban kadmidi sko yoksi to mav miado han telasi ko. Kadwa wajinuk. Alnoi nagaml no le dan delit pia dan should be nego lit pia na mawya bagon madink. Moa medwe gisko kislasin. Kajigla do di shimana dan telwidem nina Mi'kmaw gabel no Mi'kmaw na gabel no la Mi'kmaw na okchi dan skujino tel mali optimidis Kabel no Mi'kmaw wajadigam kamkwes mijuaji waskuj no negam nanaspida negam maliaptu kiptuba asam no troedo gisidedmen kadwa ebitkiga tanjuanko begisido chin waises begisla je bijiganko yelugad midi jako negam okina igana do dimnega egina kinamwane egina mwadi mijuaji waski gudliji ta hoye maim kided midi kigmanaina abik siktuan hilama dino wani na ala siewa ya nauna negamo telia katmidi ja tliagila nin madndi doni oxiden muni noblali nelegewi snoblalu kis nelegewit andelia katmidi negamo towa kai swanteni nin paskine demo nin un jigis na passi deng sani bin men demo del den ma telegewi suksijil goktumen toda negama oblali nani ana delki na ai kabel nule del bilwamu Mi'kmaw kabel nule na wat loya pejika kabel nule na Mi'kmaw ya hokchid namsduen am chitante jiga dan dela god modidis munanoktejit paskara to munanoktejit kai kaidu decision